Queen Zephora sat on her crystal throne, high above the clouds of planet Zarian. The massive floating palace moved slowly through the purple sky, its walls made of living crystal that pulsed with soft light. She had ruled this empire for 300 years, watching over 17 different star systems. Her people were beings of pure energy, wrapped in crystal armor that sparkled like diamonds. They were strong, fast, and nearly impossible to destroy. But today, something bothered her. The same stories kept reaching her ears from traders and space travelers. They spoke of a mysterious species called humans, creatures that supposedly lived far away in distant corners of the galaxy. These tales sounded impossible to believe. "Your Majesty," said Commander Kylix, her chief military advisor, his crystal body glowed blue as he approached the throne. "The traders from the Outer Rim have brought more stories about these humans." Zephora sighed. She had heard these stories countless times. According to the tales, humans were the greatest warriors in the galaxy. They supposedly fought with simple weapons made of metal and somehow defeated enemies with far better technology. The stories claimed humans could survive injuries that would kill most other species. They said humans never gave up, even when facing certain death. "Tell me, Kylix," the queen said, her voice echoing through the crystal chamber. "What makes these stories so special? Every species thinks they are the greatest warriors." Kylix's crystal form shifted colors as he thought. "Strange thing is, Your Majesty, the stories all say the same thing. Different traders, from different parts of the galaxy, all tell similar tales. They say humans fight not just to win, but to protect others. They claim humans show mercy to their enemies, yet somehow this makes them more dangerous, not less." The queen laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Mercy makes them dangerous? That makes no sense at all. Our crystal warriors are the strongest in the galaxy because we show no weakness. We strike fast and hard, leaving no room for our enemies to recover." But even as she spoke, Zephora felt curious. The stories had been reaching her for decades. Now, traders spoke of a growing power called the Terran Confederation. They said this human government was expanding through space, not by conquering planets, but by making friends with other species. The idea seemed ridiculous to her. "Your Majesty," Kylix continued, "some of our border scouts report seeing strange ships in the outer systems. They don't match any known designs. The ships are small, made of simple metal, but they move in ways that surprise our pilots." Zephora waved her hand dismissively. "Probably just smugglers with modified ships. I refuse to believe that some mythical species of soft-skinned creatures could challenge our empire." In her mind, the queen pictured what these humans might look like based on the stories. The tales described them as beings made of flesh and bone, with no natural armor or energy shields. They supposedly lived for less than 100 years, which seemed impossibly short to her. How could such weak creatures become legendary warriors? "The stories say they have something called heart," Kylix added. "Whatever that means." The traders claim this heart makes humans fight harder than any other species. "Heart," Zephora repeated. "You mean the organ that pumps blood? How does that make them better fighters?" "I don't know, Your Majesty, but the stories are very specific. They say humans will sacrifice themselves to save strangers. They say human soldiers refuse to leave wounded friends behind, even when it means certain death. They claim humans can turn enemies into allies just by showing kindness." The queen stood up from her throne and walked to the great window that showed the stars beyond. Her empire stretched across so many worlds, filled with billions of subjects who obeyed her without question. She had built this empire through strength and fear. When planets resisted, she destroyed their cities until they surrendered. When rebels rose up, she crushed them completely. This was how empires were built and maintained. "These human stories sound like fairy tales," she said finally. "Real warriors don't show mercy. Real warriors don't risk their lives for strangers. Real strength comes from making your enemies fear you so much they never dare to fight back." But deep in her crystal heart, something stirred. The consistency of the stories troubled her. Why would so many different traders, from so many different places, all tell the same impossible tales? And why did the idea of warriors who fought to protect others instead of conquering them fascinate her so much? Perhaps, she thought to herself, it would be interesting to meet one of these mythical humans, just to prove the stories wrong. Had no idea that her wish would soon come true in the most unexpected way. Far away, in the dark space between stars, a small human ship was limping toward her territory. Its pilot was badly wounded, the ship's systems failing one by one. The woman inside that ship would soon change everything Zephyra thought she knew about strength, courage, and what it truly meant to be a warrior. The floating palace continued its slow drift through the purple sky, its crystal walls humming with energy. Queen Zephyra returned to her throne, dismissing the human stories from her mind. She had an empire to run, and she had no time for fairy tales about impossible warriors from distant stars. But fate, it seemed, had other plans for the Crystal Queen and her ancient empire. 3 days after Queen Zephyra had dismissed the human stories as myths, everything changed. Commander Kylex burst into the throne room, his crystal body glowing bright red with excitement. Your Majesty, our patrol ships have found something incredible in the asteroid field near the 7th moon, he said. Barely able to contain himself, Zephyra looked up from the reports she was reading. What could possibly be so important that you rush in here without permission? We found a ship, Your Majesty. A damaged vessel drifting through space. But it's not like anything we've seen before. The design matches the descriptions in those trader stories. The Queen felt her crystal heart skip. You mean ... Yes, Your Majesty? We think it's a human ship. Within an hour, Zephyra stood in the palace's docking bay, watching as her soldiers carefully moved a small, battered spacecraft inside. The ship was nothing like her people's crystal vessels. It was made of simple metal, scarred and burned from some terrible battle. Strange symbols were painted on its side in a language she didn't recognize. Have you found the pilot? She asked. Yes, Your Majesty, replied Captain Nexus, the leader of the rescue team. There's only one person inside. A female. She's badly hurt and unconscious. Our medical team is working on her now. Zephyra felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. After centuries of hearing impossible stories, she was about to meet a real human being. Would this creature be the legendary warrior from the tales, or just another ordinary alien species? She followed the medical team to the healing chambers, where the most advanced crystal technology worked to save lives. Through the transparent walls, she saw her first human being. The woman lying on the medical table looked so small and fragile. Her skin was a warm brown color, much darker than the pale descriptions in some stories. Her black hair was cut short, and several scars marked her face and arms. She wore a strange uniform made of thick fabric, with metal badges and patches sewn onto it. How fragile she looks, Zephyra whispered. No natural armor, no energy shield, no crystal plating. How do such delicate beings survive in space? Dr. Prism, the palace's chief medical officer, approached with his report. Your Majesty, this creature is fascinating. Her body is completely organic, no crystal components at all. She has a skeleton made of calcium, muscles made of protein, and her brain is just soft tissue. Yet somehow, she's still alive after injuries. That should have been fatal. What kind of injuries? Plasma burns, broken ribs, internal bleeding. But here's the strange part. Her body is healing itself naturally, without any crystal enhancement, without any energy infusion, just the body's own repair systems working overtime. Zephyra stared at the unconscious human. The medical readings showed a heart beating steadily, lungs breathing rhythmically, brainwaves indicating deep but stable unconsciousness. Everything about this being seemed impossible, so weak, yet somehow still fighting to survive. 2 days later, the human woman opened her eyes. Zephyra was in the room when it happened, studying the strange creature's equipment and weapons. The human's eyes were dark brown, alert, and showed no fear despite waking up in a completely alien place. AM1? The woman asked, her voice calm and steady. Zephyra stepped forward, letting her crystal form catch the light impressively. You are in my palace, human. I am Queen Zephyra, ruler of the Crystal Empire. You are my prisoner. The human sat up slowly, wincing from her injuries but never taking her eyes off the queen. I'm Captain Luna Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Corps. My ship was attacked by pirates. I thank you for saving my life. You thank me? Zephora was surprised. Most prisoners beg for mercy or threaten revenge. You thank your captor? Captain Rodriguez smiled slightly. Could have left me to die in space. Instead, you brought me here and healed my wounds. That deserves gratitude, regardless of what happens next. This response puzzled Zephora greatly. She had expected either cowering fear or angry defiance. Instead, this human showed calm dignity and genuine appreciation. It was unlike anything she had encountered in 3 centuries of rule. Over the following days, Zephora found herself visiting the humans' quarters frequently. She told herself it was for interrogation purposes, but truthfully, she was fascinated by Captain Rodriguez's stories. Tell me about these battles I've heard described, Zephora demanded during one visit. The stories claim humans can defeat superior technology with primitive weapons. Surely these are exaggerations. Rodriguez leaned back in her chair, seemingly comfortable, despite being a prisoner. What specifically have you heard? Tales of humans holding impossible positions against overwhelming odds. Stories of soldiers refusing to abandon wounded comrades, even facing certain death. Claims that humans show mercy to enemies and somehow become stronger for it. Those aren't exaggerations, Your Majesty. They're just Tuesday for most human soldiers. Zephora's crystal form flickered with disbelief. Impossible. No species sacrifices strategic advantage for sentiment. We don't see it as sacrifice, Rodriguez explained. We see it as what makes victory worth winning. What good is conquering a galaxy if you lose your soul doing it? Soul, Zephora had never heard this word before. It's the part of you that makes you who you are. Your values, your compassion, your ability to tell right from wrong. Humans believe that if you compromise your soul to win a battle, you've actually lost something much more important than the battle itself. These conversations continued for days. Rodriguez spoke of human battles, where soldiers shared their food with starving enemies, where commanders risked entire operations to save civilian populations, where peace treaties were honored even when breaking them would bring advantage. You make humans sound like saints, Zephora said skeptically. Rodriguez laughed. Oh, we're definitely not saints. We make plenty of mistakes. We can be petty, selfish, and stupid. But most of us try to do the right thing when it really matters. We've learned that being strong isn't just about winning fights. It's about what you're fighting for. Zephora found these ideas both fascinating and disturbing. Everything she had built her empire on suggested that strength came from fear, that mercy was weakness, that showing kindness to enemies only encouraged more enemies. Yet this human spoke of a completely different philosophy with absolute conviction. I think Zephora said finally it's time to test whether human warriors are truly as capable as the stories claim. Queen Zephora led Captain Rodriguez through the crystal corridors toward the palace's training chambers. She had decided to see for herself if human combat abilities matched the impossible stories. The training hall was massive, with walls that could change shape and create any battle scenario imaginable. I want to see what makes human warriors so special, Zephora announced. My guards will use practice weapons only. Show me these legendary human fighting skills. Rodriguez examined the equipment available. Simple metal weapons compared to the advanced crystal technology her captors possessed. She picked up a basic sword and tested its weight. Your Majesty, I should mention that I'm still recovering from my injuries. I won't be at full strength. Excuses already? Zephora raised an eyebrow. Made of living crystal. Not excuses, just facts. But I'll do my best. 3 crystal guards entered the arena, their bodies gleaming with rainbow light, for each twice. Rodriguez's size and carried energy weapons that could stun or paralyze. To Zephora, this seemed like an unfair match in favor of the human. Since her guards were holding back from using lethal force, the first guard charged forward with his energy staff glowing bright blue. Rodriguez didn't try to overpower him. Instead, she stepped aside at the last moment, using the guard's own momentum against him. As he stumbled past, she tapped him gently on the back of his crystal neck with her sword. Point to the human, Zephora called out, surprised by the simplicity of the move. The second guard approached more carefully, keeping his distance and trying to corner Rodriguez with energy blasts. But the humans seemed to predict where each shot would go, moving just enough to avoid them while conserving her energy. When the guard got frustrated and moved closer, Rodriguez used the arena's crystal walls to bounce around behind him, scoring another gentle touch with her weapon. Zephyra leaned forward in fascination. This wasn't the brutal, overwhelming force she had expected. Rodriguez fought like water, flowing around obstacles instead of smashing through them. The third guard tried a different approach, working with his teammates to surround Rodriguez. The three crystal warriors coordinated their attacks, trying to trap her in the center of the arena. For a moment, it looked like the human was in serious trouble. Then Rodriguez did something completely unexpected. Instead of trying to fight her way out, she suddenly dropped her weapon and raised her hands. "I surrender," she said calmly. Zephyra stood up angrily. "What? You give up so easily?" But Rodriguez wasn't done. As the guards relaxed and moved closer to accept her surrender, she suddenly rolled forward, swept the legs of the nearest guard, grabbed his dropped energy staff, and used it to disable the other two guards' weapons. In less than 5 seconds, she had turned complete defeat into total victory. "How did you do that?" Zephyra demanded. Rodriguez helped the fallen guards back to their feet, making sure none were hurt. "Your guards fought with honor, Your Majesty. They believed my surrender was real because they wanted to show mercy. I used their kindness as a tactical advantage. But that's cheating, Your Majesty. That's thinking. Your guards are incredibly strong and well-trained. In a straight fight, they'd probably beat me. So I didn't fight straight. Fought smart." Zephyra walked down to the arena floor, her crystal form pulsing with confused light. "Kate, but you used their mercy against them? Doesn't that prove mercy is weakness?" Rodriguez shook her head. "Proves that mercy requires wisdom. Your guards showed me kindness, which is admirable, but they forgot to stay alert. True strength combines compassion with intelligence." Before Zephyra could respond, Commander Kylix rushed into the training hall, his crystal body flashing urgent red colors. "Your Majesty, we have a crisis. 3 of our outer worlds have declared rebellion. They've seized the mining stations on Kepler 7, the shipyards at Nova Point, and the agricultural centers on Greenhaven. They're demanding independence from the Empire." Zephyra's form blazed with angry light. This was exactly the kind of challenge that required immediate, overwhelming force. "Prepare the fleet, Commander. We'll destroy their cities until they remember who rules this empire." "Wait," Rodriguez interrupted. "Your Majesty, may I ask why they're rebelling?" "Because they think they can get away with it?" Zephyra snapped. "Because they've forgotten to fear me." Rodriguez stepped forward carefully. "But what do they actually want? Are they being treated unfairly? Are they hungry? Are their people suffering?" Kylix's crystal form shifted nervously. "Well, the outer worlds have been complaining about high taxes and food shortages. But every empire has taxes, and shortages happen. What if there's a better way?" Rodriguez suggested. "Instead of destroying cities, what if we found out what's really wrong and fixed it?" Zephyra laughed harshly. "You want me to negotiate with rebels? It's not how empires maintain order." "Your Majesty, I've seen what happens when governments only use force. Sometimes it works temporarily, but it always creates more problems later. People who are treated fairly don't usually rebel." The Queen paused. Something in Rodriguez's voice reminded her of their earlier conversations about human philosophy. "What are you suggesting? Let me help plan your response to the rebellion. Not the military attack, but the overall strategy. Give me a chance to show you how human thinking works in a real situation." Zephyra considered this. She was curious about human methods, and the rebellion needed to be handled carefully. 3 worlds rebelling at once suggested this was more organized than usual. "Fine," she decided. "You'll work with Commander Kylix to develop a plan. But if your human methods fail, we do this the traditional way." Over the next few days, Rodriguez studied the rebellion with an approach that baffled Zephyra's military advisors. Instead of planning attacks, she requested detailed information about conditions on the rebel worlds. She wanted to know about food distribution, working conditions, local leadership, and civilian complaints. "The rebels aren't evil, Your Majesty," Rodriguez explained during a strategy meeting. "They're desperate. The outer worlds produce most of your empire's food and materials, but they keep very little for themselves. People are working hard, but barely surviving. That's how empires function, Kylix argued. The outer worlds serve the core worlds. But what if they served willingly instead of being forced? Rodriguez countered. What if they stayed loyal because they wanted to, not because they feared punishment? She outlined a plan that seemed impossible to Zephora. Instead of sending warships, they would send food and medical supplies. Instead of attacking rebel leaders, they would invite them to negotiations. Instead of threatening destruction, they would offer reforms and fair representation. This will make us look weak, Zephora protested. No, Your Majesty. This will make you look strong enough to show mercy. Mercy, combined with justice, is the foundation of lasting power. Against her better judgment, Zephora decided to try the human approach. She had no idea that this decision would change not only the rebellion, but the entire future of her empire. The human strategy worked better than anyone expected. Within 2 weeks, the rebellion on all 3 worlds had collapsed, not through violence, but through conversation. When Queen Zephora's ships arrived carrying food instead of weapons, and when her representatives came offering negotiations instead of threats, the rebel leaders were so surprised they agreed to meet. Captain Rodriguez had been right about everything. The outer worlds weren't rebelling because they were evil or greedy. They were rebelling because their people were hungry and desperate. Children were going to bed without enough food while their parents worked in mines and farms that sent everything to the core worlds. I don't understand how this worked, Zephora admitted, as she and Rodriguez walked through the palace gardens. The crystal flowers around them glowed softly in the evening light. It gave them what they wanted instead of punishing them for wanting it. According to everything I know about leadership, they should see this as weakness and demand more. Rodriguez smiled as she touched one of the glowing crystal petals. But they're not demanding more, are they? They're working harder than ever, and they're doing it willingly? It was true. Production on all 3 worlds had actually increased after the negotiations. The rebel leaders had become some of Zephora's most loyal supporters. Reports from the outer worlds spoke of celebrations in her honor and renewed dedication to the empire. You've changed everything I thought I knew about ruling, Zephora said quietly. For 300 years, I believed fear was the only way to maintain order, but your way. People follow you because they want to, not because they have to. As they walked, Rodriguez noticed how much the queen had changed over the past weeks. The harsh, commanding ruler she had first met was still there. Now Zephora asked questions instead of just giving orders. She listened to advisors instead of dismissing them. She seemed genuinely interested in the welfare of her subjects. Your Majesty, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Why did you become a ruler? What made you want to build an empire? Zephora stopped walking and stared up at the stars visible through the garden's crystal dome. I wanted to protect my people. When I was young, our homeworld was constantly attacked by raiders and pirates. We were weak, divided, and afraid. I swore that if I ever had the power, I would make sure my people never had to live in fear again. And you succeeded, Rodriguez said. Your empire is safe and prosperous. But somewhere along the way, protecting your people became controlling them. The fear you wanted to eliminate from outside enemies, you accidentally created within your own borders. The queen's crystal form dimmed with sadness. I became the thing I originally fought against. Not became. You just lost your way for. While the good news is, it's never too late to find it again. Their friendship had grown deeper over the weeks since the rebellion. Rodriguez was the first person in centuries who spoke to Zephora as an equal instead of a subject. The queen found herself sharing doubts and fears she had never admitted to anyone. I've been alone for so long, Zephora confessed. When you rule through fear, you can't have real friends. Everyone around you is either afraid of you or trying to use you. I forgot what it felt like to trust someone. You can trust me, Rodriguez said simply. I know. That's what scares me. Their conversation was interrupted by urgent alarms echoing through the palace. Commander Kylix came running through the gardens, his crystal body flashing emergency red. Your Majesty, we're under attack. A group of your own crystal nobles have surrounded the palace with warships. They're demanding that you surrender and eliminate the human influence. Rodriguez immediately stepped protectively closer to Zephora. How many ships? 12 battlecruisers, plus fighters. They're led by Lord Pyrrhix, your former military advisor. He claims you've been corrupted by human weakness and are no longer fit to rule. Zephyr's form blazed with angry light. Pyrrhix always opposed any change. He probably saw the peaceful resolution of the rebellion as proof that I've gone soft. Need to get you to the secure command center, Rodriguez said, but Zephora shook her head. No, I won't hide from my own subjects. If they want to challenge my rule, they can do it face to face. Your Majesty, this isn't about pride. This is about staying alive long enough to prove them wrong. As they moved through the palace corridors toward the command center, explosions rocked the building. The attackers weren't just making threats, they were actually firing on the palace itself. They're targeting the throne room and the main power core, Kylix reported. If they destroy the power core, the palace will fall out of the sky. Rodriguez was studying the tactical displays when she noticed something disturbing. Your Majesty, look at their attack pattern. They're not trying to capture you alive. They're trying to destroy the entire palace, with everyone inside. The realization hit Zephora like a physical blow. They mean to kill me. And everyone loyal to you, including me. Suddenly the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in red light. Through the command center's crystal windows, you could see the attackers' ships moving closer, their weapons charging for another strike. We have maybe 10 minutes before they break through our shields, Kylix warned. That's when Rodriguez made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. She grabbed the nearest weapon, one of the Crystal Guard's energy rifles, and started toward the exit. Where are you going? Zephora demanded. To buy you time to escape. If they want to fight, I'll give them one. You can't fight 12 warships. By yourself. Rodriguez turned back with a sad smile. I can try, and maybe that's enough. But before she could leave, Zephora grabbed her arm. Wait, I have a better idea. What if we don't fight them at all? What do you mean? What you taught me. What if instead of meeting force with force, we try something different? Rodriguez looked at the tactical display showing the approaching ships. Your Majesty, I don't think Lord Pyrrhix is in a negotiating mood. Maybe not. But you've shown me that there's always another way. Help me find it. Its explosions continued to rock the palace and the enemy ships closed in. Zephora and Rodriguez worked together to find a solution that didn't involve more violence. The Queen had learned to trust human wisdom. But now both their lives depended on whether that wisdom could work against enemies who had already chosen to fight. I have an idea, Rodriguez said finally, but you're not going to like it.
No.
Me. We surrender. Zephora stared at her in shock. We what? We surrender, but not the way they expect. We surrender, but not the way they expect. Rodriguez explained quickly as another explosion shook the palace. Your Majesty, what do these rebels really want? Zephora thought for a moment despite the chaos around them. They want the old empire. Back. They want me to rule through fear again. Exactly. So we give them something they never saw coming. Show them what real strength looks like. Rodriguez's plan was simple, but brilliant. Instead of hiding or fighting, Queen Zephora would broadcast a message to the entire empire. Not just to the attacking ships, but to every world, every citizen, every crystal being in all 17 star systems. Are you sure about this? Commander Kylix asked nervously as he prepared the empire-wide communication system. Oh, Zephora admitted. Oh. But I trust Rodriguez, and I trust what she's taught me about leadership. The broadcast began just as Lord Pyrrhix's ships prepared for their final attack. Zephora appeared on screens across the galaxy, standing not in her throne room, but in the simple quarters where Rodriguez had been staying. The human captain stood beside her, no longer a prisoner, but clearly an honored guest. My people, Zephora began, her crystal form glowing with calm light instead of angry fire. You have heard that some nobles believe I have become weak. They say that showing mercy to the outer worlds, that listening to this human advisor has made me unfit to rule. They may be right. Lord Pyrrhix, watching from his command ship, smiled with satisfaction. The Queen was about to abdicate. I may be unfit to rule as an empress, Zephora continued, because I no longer want to be an empress. I want to be a leader. and there's a big difference between the two. She went on to explain everything she had learned from Rodriguez. She spoke about the difference between ruling through fear and leading through trust. She talked about how the Outer World rebellion had ended not with destruction, but with understanding. She admitted her mistakes and spoke about her hopes for a better future. This human, Captain Rodriguez, has shown me that true strength comes not from making others afraid of you, but from making them proud to follow you. She has taught me that the greatest victories are won not by conquering enemies, but by turning them into friends. The broadcast was being watched by billions of crystal beings across the Empire. On the outer worlds that had recently rebelled, people gathered around screens with tears in their crystalline eyes. They had never heard their queen speak like this before. Therefore, Zephora announced, "I am proposing something that has never been tried in our history. I want to transform our empire into a commonwealth, a government where every world has a voice, where representatives from all species can work together to solve problems." Lord Pyrrhix was furious. This was exactly the kind of weakness he had feared. He ordered his ships to resume their attack, but something unexpected happened. Several of his own captains refused to fire. "Sir," one of them reported, "my crew is saying they want to hear more about this Commonwealth idea." "Mine too," said another captain. "The Queen sounds different, stronger somehow." Rodriguez had been right again. By showing vulnerability and admitting mistakes, Zephora appeared more powerful than she ever had when trying to seem invincible. The tide turned completely when the crews of 3 rebel ships mutinied against their commanders and declared loyalty to the Queen's new vision. Lord Pyrrhix found himself outnumbered and abandoned by his own forces. "This isn't over," he transmitted angrily before retreating with the few ships still loyal to him, but it was over. The crisis had ended not with violence, but with the promise of something better. The empire-wide response to Zephora's broadcast was overwhelmingly positive. Representatives from dozens of worlds requested permission to participate in planning the new Commonwealth government. 3 months later, the transformation was remarkable. The floating crystal palace had been converted into a meeting place where beings from across the galaxy could gather to discuss problems and solutions. Queen Zephora still held her title, but now she shared power with elected representatives from every member world. Rodriguez had been officially appointed as the first human ambassador to the Crystal Commonwealth. Her small quarters had been expanded into a proper embassy, and several other humans had arrived to help establish diplomatic relations between their peoples. "I never imagined this would work so well," Zephora admitted as she and Rodriguez stood on the palace's highest balcony, watching ships from dozens of different species coming and going in the docking bays below. "You did all the hard work," Rodriguez replied. "I just pointed out that there might be another way. You did more than that. You showed me that being strong enough to change is harder than being strong enough to fight. You taught me that the best leaders are the ones brave enough to admit when they're wrong." Their friendship had become legendary throughout the galaxy. Stories spread of the Crystal Queen who learned wisdom from a human prisoner, and the human captain who chose trust over suspicion even when facing an alien empire. The Commonwealth's first major achievement came when they successfully negotiated peace between 2 warring species in a neighboring sector. Using the same principles Rodriguez had taught Zephora, listening to both sides, addressing real grievances, and finding solutions that benefited everyone, they ended a conflict that had lasted for decades. "We're creating something new," Rodriguez observed during one of their evening walks through the Crystal Gardens. "It's not a human empire or a crystal empire, but something that belongs to everyone who chooses to be part of it." "The myths about human warriors were true," Zephora said with a smile, "but not in the way I expected. You didn't conquer us with weapons, you conquered us with ideas. You showed us that the strongest warriors are the ones who fight for peace instead of for victory." Years passed, and the Crystal Commonwealth grew to include over 100 worlds. The model they had created spread throughout the galaxy as other species saw the benefits of cooperation over conquest. Trade flourished, conflicts decreased, and technological advancement accelerated as different species shared their knowledge freely. Rodriguez eventually returned to Earth for visits. She always came back to the Crystal Commonwealth. Her work as an ambassador had evolved into something much larger. She had become a teacher, showing other species how to resolve conflicts through understanding rather than force. On her final evening before one such trip to Earth, she and Zephora sat in the crystal gardens one last time, watching the stars through the transparent dome overhead. "The stories about humans will change now," Zephora said thoughtfully. "Instead of myths about impossible warriors, they'll tell true stories about people who chose friendship over fear. And they'll tell stories about a crystal queen who was brave enough to listen," Rodriguez added, "was strong enough to change, and wise enough to build something better than an empire." Their legacy lived on in every peaceful negotiation, every species that chose cooperation over conflict, and every leader who remembered that true strength comes from lifting others up rather than keeping them down. The myth of the invincible human warrior had been replaced by something even more powerful: the reality of humans and aliens working together to create a better galaxy for everyone.